Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you on a journey today, not just across the world, but deep into your own heart. When I first heard about Palestine, I didn't think humanity. I thought headlines. I thought terrorists. That's what they told me. That's what the media fed me. That's what the world seemed to agree on. But what I saw with my own eyes shattered my soul in the most beautiful, powerful, undeniable way. I didn't go there expecting change. I went there with questions, with fear, with judgment I didn't even know I carried. But then I met a child wide-eyed, barefoot, smiling, not afraid, not angry, just alive. I asked him, "Aren't you scared?" He said, "Scared of what? They can take my house, but not my heart. Allah gives me strength." That moment cracked me open, because here's the truth. When you see someone smile with nothing and still worship, still love, still give, you start to question everything you ever believed about strength. I saw families who had lost everything, yet still opened their homes to me. I saw mothers feeding others while their own pantries were empty. I saw men praying not for vengeance, but for peace. These were not terrorists. These were not monsters. These were not the enemies. These were some of the most faithful, loving, resilient people I had ever met in my life. I had been blind not because I couldn't see, but because I wouldn't look. You see, we've all been given filters, through the news, through politics, through fear, but when you remove those filters, you begin to see the truth, and the truth is this: the strongest people aren't the ones with power, they're the ones with purpose, with peace, with prayer. That's what I found in Palestine, and that's what led me to Islam, not because someone forced me, not because I wanted to rebel, but because I saw what true surrender looks like. Not surrender to oppression, but surrender to a higher power, even in the middle of pain. The kind of faith that says, even if the world breaks me, I will still bow only to God. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just about religion. This is about recognition of truth, of pain, of shared humanity. It's about removing the armor from your heart and letting real stories in, because when you meet the enemy and find a brother, when you witness suffering and discover strength, when you see faith in ashes and beauty in ruins, you change, not slowly, not slightly, but permanently. They call them terrorists. But what I saw in Palestine changed my soul forever, and maybe, just maybe, it can change yours too. Perception is the silent sculptor of our reality. It's not the facts themselves, but how we frame those facts that determine what we believe, how we feel, and who we think we are. From the moment we're born, we're bombarded with other people's interpretations, the media, our education systems, the voices around us. Slowly, brick by brick, a wall of perception forms around us, and we begin to mistake that wall for the world. But here's the truth: perception is not reality. Perception is a prison, a beautifully painted, deeply convincing, emotionally fortified prison. And the only key that can unlock it is direct experience. That's what happened to me. I thought I knew the story. I thought I had the facts. I had seen the footage, heard the rhetoric, absorbed the opinions of trusted voices. I had built an emotional and mental framework around who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. And when I first heard the word Palestinian, my mind didn't reach for a human being, it reached for a label. Terrorist, violent, dangerous, radical, and the moment I accepted that label without question, I stopped seeing people. I started seeing shadows, but then something happened. I broke the cycle. I went. I traveled. I stepped inside the very world I had only ever viewed from a distance. I didn't go there to become an activist. I didn't go there to prove a point. I went to learn, to witness, to see with my own eyes. And what I saw didn't just challenge my perception, it annihilated it. Because when you sit across from a father who has lost his children, and yet he smiles and says, "Allah is enough for me." When you see a teenager missing his legs from a bomb blast, laughing and playing soccer with prosthetics and joy. When you witness a grandmother baking bread for strangers while living in rubble. You begin to realize, this is not what I was told. You begin to understand that experience has a power no book, no video, no tweet can ever match. Experience is the soul's direct connection to truth. It humbles the ego. It burns through assumptions. It turns enemies into teachers, and once you've seen through the wall of perception, you can never go back. You realize that you've been living inside a lie, not a deliberate one, but a systemic one. And the most dangerous lies are not the ones we're told, they're the ones we never question. This is why I say perception is a prison, and the only thing that can truly free you is direct experience. It is the moment when you stop consuming filtered, prepackaged narratives and start living truth firsthand. Because when you meet the other, and you see yourself in their eyes, the illusion dies. You no longer see nations, borders, politics. You see a soul, and the soul speaks a language far deeper than flags or ideologies. The soul only knows love, pain, connection, truth. When you experience this, you're no longer a puppet to fear. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's script. You've become a sovereign human being, awakened not just intellectually, but spiritually. That's the moment your life begins to align with a higher frequency. That's when compassion enters. That's when humility takes root. That's when transformation is no longer a concept, it's a reality. This is what happened to me. I walked into a place I had feared, a place I had judged from a distance, and I found love, grace, strength, faith. And in that space, my perception didn't just shift, it shattered. And what emerged was something infinitely more powerful than belief. What emerged was truth. Labels are the language of division. They are shortcuts our minds use to create certainty, but that certainty comes at a massive cost. We lose the complexity of humanity. The moment you call someone a labeled terrorist, victim, criminal, refugee, you stop listening. You stop wondering. You stop caring, because labels dehumanize. They reduce a three-dimensional, living, breathing soul into a single, flat identity. And once we accept that, we allow ourselves to turn away, to disengage, to justify harm. But here's the thing. When you sit down with a person, when you hear their story, their laughter, their tears, their dreams, the label burns off. It cannot survive in the presence of real human connection. Because stories humanize. Stories are the bridge between judgment and empathy. Stories bypass the intellect and touch the heart. I heard stories in Palestine that changed me forever. A man whose home was demolished 3 times and who still planted olive trees because he believed in the future. A little girl who walked an hour each day to school and told me she wanted to be a doctor so she could help heal people on both sides. A woman who had lost her husband in an airstrike and still invited me in for tea, saying, "Guests are a blessing, even from a world that doesn't understand us." These were not statistics. These were not symbols. These were humans, each one carrying a universe of emotion, memory, and meaning. And when you truly listen, not to respond, not to debate, but to understand something miraculous happens, your heart expands. You begin to see that the world isn't divided into good and evil. It's divided into those who listen and those who don't. And the moment we start listening, really listening to each other's stories, we begin to heal. Not just politically, not just culturally, but spiritually, because every story is a doorway. Every story invites us to drop our armor and remember that we're not as different as we think. We all want safety. We all want love. We all want a sense of belonging. And when you deny someone their story, you deny them their dignity. This is what I learned in Palestine, that every human being carries a sacred narrative. And if you only judge from the outside, if you only accept the label, you miss the miracle of who they truly are. Faith is not forged in air-conditioned rooms and comfortable conversations. It is born in fire in the midst of loss, struggle, injustice, and unbearable pain. And yet, what I saw in Palestine was the most powerful, radiant faith I've ever witnessed. Not because it was loud, but because it was unwavering, quiet, grounded, alive. There is a kind of belief that comes from comfort, the kind that says prayers when it's convenient, that attends services out of habit. And then there is the faith that emerges from the ashes, the faith of a mother whose child is gone, but whose voice still rises in prayer. The faith of a father who has nothing left to protect, but still says Alhamdulillah. The faith of children who sing as drones fly overhead. That kind of faith is holy, it is raw, it is real, and it is unbreakable. I stood in mosques that had been bombed, barefoot on cold marble floors, and I watched people bow with tears in their eyes and smiles on their faces. Not smiles of denial, smiles of surrender. Smiles of knowing that even in the darkest of nights, there is a light that cannot be extinguished. And that light is God. What I witnessed wasn't religion as theory. It was Islam in motion. It was the embodiment of peace amidst war, of dignity amidst humiliation, of surrender not as defeat, but as divine power. And in those moments, I felt something awaken in me, a memory, a longing, a resonance that had no words but was louder than anything I had ever felt. I didn't find faith in a book or a lecture. I found it in the streets of Palestine, in the broken homes turned into houses of worship, in the hands of people who had nothing and yet held onto everything that truly mattered. Faith isn't found in comfort. It's forged in crisis. And if you want to understand what it means to truly believe, to truly surrender, go to the place where everything else has been stripped away and watch what still remains. Some journeys you plan. Others you are pulled into. You don't choose them, they choose you, and they change you in ways you can never predict, never control, never reverse. I didn't go to Palestine looking for God. I didn't go looking for a spiritual rebirth. I didn't go expecting to question everything I believed about the world and my place in it. But that's exactly what happened. There is a divine intelligence behind every detour, every unexpected encounter, every moment that challenges your worldview. And when you say yes to those moments, when you lean in instead of pulling back, you open yourself to transformation. You open yourself to awakening. I didn't become a Muslim because I was convinced by arguments. I became a Muslim because the experience chose me, because the love, patience, and resilience I saw shattered my ego and resurrected my spirit, because the stories I heard reconnected me to the sacred, because the prayers I joined pulled me into the eternal rhythm of something far greater than myself. You don't choose your awakening, but you do choose whether to answer it. The minute I stopped judging, everything started changing. The walls I had built inside me, walls of fear, of certainty, of identity, began to fall. And in their place came something softer, deeper, more real: understanding, connection, faith. Judgment is easy. It's lazy. It gives us the illusion of superiority, but it disconnects us from the very thing we need most, each other. Judgment blocks transformation. Compassion invites it. I realized that if I wanted to grow not just intellectually, but spiritually, I had to stop assuming and start seeing. I had to drop the narrative and embrace the reality. I had to let go of us versus them and begin living as we. Transformation begins when judgment ends, and from that space, miracles unfold.